I will handle this matter. Di Beichen could imagine that during that time, Bailey Hongzhuang must have gone through some risks again. After he went back, he felt that something was strange in the sect. Now it seems that the issues in the sect may have been deliberately caused by Han Xiling to distract him and make it easier for her to attack Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking of this, Di Beichen felt a chill in his heart. So many things had happened during the time he was away. No matter what happens in the future, he couldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang face everything alone again. What Mo Yinjue said was right, he was indeed not a competent husband. However, that was before. He would not let such a thing happen again in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I encountered the first wave of assassins, and then Mo Yinjue appeared. The second wave of killers left after realizing that they couldn't attack me. After that, I stayed with everyone and never acted alone, so the assassins never had the chance to make a move. Now that you are here, I think those assassins have already left." Her clear and bright beautiful eyes shone with a calm and confident light. Han Xiling had been reckless in trying to kill her, but when Di Beichen appeared, Han Xiling became more cautious. Because, Han Xiling didn't mind showing her cruel side to anyone, except for Di Beichen. Di Beichen was not surprised either. He gently stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's long, black and silky hair. "I will handle this matter." Bailey Hongzhuang detected the decisiveness in Di Beichen's words, and she understood that he had already made a decision. In fact, she had been reluctant to mention Han Xiling in front of Di Beichen before, and she also didn't want to cause difficulties for Di Beichen. If it weren't for Han Xiling's help during those years, Di Beichen's situation in the kingdom of Fengbo would probably have been even worse. Therefore, she also felt grateful to Han Xiling. However, when Han Xiling tried to have her assassinated, all that was gone. It was clearly not Bailey Hongzhuang's style to not take revenge. Di Beichen wrapped Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms, her refreshing scent filled his nostrils, and his frown quietly eased. Only when he was with Bailey Hongzhuang could he be so at ease and relaxed. During the days when he was away, he constantly worried about Bailey Hongzhuang, hoping that everything could be resolved as soon as possible so that he could return earlier. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries earlier, he focused all his attention on Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries. Now that her injuries had improved somewhat, he finally relaxed completely. Bailey Hongzhuang is a unique treasure to him, and only when he was by her side could he feel at ease. At this moment, holding Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms felt extremely comfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang was also quietly leaning against Di Beichen's chest, listening to his powerful heartbeat. For her, this tranquil moment was also a kind of enjoyment. She understood that when Di Beichen said he would handle it, he would definitely handle it. Perhaps Di Beichen still had some hesitation before, but now that he had made a decision, it would naturally be much easier to deal with. After a long while, Di Beichen finally said, "Wife, I have never heard that you also have talent in the art of inscriptions before. If it weren't for the arrival of Bai Jingtian and the others, he might not have known about this. He never knew that his wife had such an ability. It is really amazing." The two principals bite the bullet. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, "I haven't been studying inscription techniques for long. I just happened to meet Bai Lao and had a conversation with him while I was in the Qingxiao kingdom." Di Beichen's lips curled into a slight smile, and his slender and glossy fingers brushed over Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and petite nose. "How many surprises do you still have in store for me?" Although what Bailey Hongzhuang said were simple, Di Beichen understood that just the fact that Bai Jingtian was willing to give up the position of president of the Inscription Masters Guild to Bailey Hongzhuang already proved how outstanding her proficiency in inscription techniques was. As a doctor, alchemist or inscription master, Bailey Hongzhuang's talents amazed him. Disregarding her identity as a cultivator, he had never seen a person as gifted as Bailey Hongzhuang. Her achievements in these three aspects were already surprising. Others said he was excellent, but he felt that Hongzhuang was even better than him. Perhaps, the encounter between him and Hongzhuang was destined to happen from the beginning. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. She was indeed very interested in the art of inscription. Although learning inscription would take a lot of time and effort, she was a little different from other cultivators. While other cultivators were sleeping, she cultivated instead of sleeping. In this way, she saved a lot of time. Back when her family elders told her to cultivate instead of sleep, she found it extremely painful at first. However, after getting used to it, she found that this way of doing things was quite good. Cultivation also makes people feel refreshed and invigorated, and it allowed her to have more time to study alchemy. It was precisely because of this that she was able to achieve such great results in both cultivation and alchemy. While Bailey Hongzhuang was talking to Di Beichen, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi also came to the inn. When everyone in Kanglan Academy saw Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi, a look of disgust appeared on their faces. They no longer had the respect for these two principals that they did in It Ally. Everything they did disgusted them and they do not want to see them again. Once upon a time, these academy principals were seen as highly respected figures towering above others, but now, all of this had disappeared. Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi naturally knew that the people of Kanglan Academy did not welcome them, but they came out of helplessness. Nangong Oi found out that the Kanglan Academy team would leave Qingshao Kingdom tomorrow, and had asked the two of them to find a way to get the antidote from Bailey Hongzhuang. Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi were extremely helpless about this, but Nangong Oi's attitude was very insistent, and they had to come. When they first learned of this matter, the two of them were also surprised. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so ruthless and experienced in her methods, not at all like an ordinary academy student. How big is the gap between the royal family and Bailey Hongzhuang? However, Bailey Hongzhuang made the entire royal family of the Qingshao Kingdom powerless against her. Why did the two principals come here today? Asked Huan Chuyu nonchalantly after seeing Jian Qingqiu and the other person. He no longer had a good impression of them after what had happened earlier, so he was not polite when he saw them again. Feeling the coldness from Huan Chuyu, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi looked at each other, the helplessness in their eyes intensified, but they could only force their smiles. Elder Huan, can we go inside and talk? There were so many students here, it was really inconvenient for them to talk. Neither salty nor bland, Huan Chuyu also noticed where Jian Qingqiu's gaze was directed. After a moment of contemplation, he nodded and said, "Please come in." With those words, Huan Chuyu did not even glance at Jian Qingqiu and walked into the house by himself, displaying his indifference. As academy principals, Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi had never received such cold treatment before. Previously, they were always high and mighty when facing Huan Chuyu and Ren Tianxiong. Unexpectedly, fortunes reversed, and now that Huan Chuyu had decided to cut ties with the other two major academies, it was their turn to come to him and seek his help. Such a change really made them helpless. Gong Shaoqing and others saw Huan Chuyu's attitude towards Jian Qingqiu, and they were relieved. Their hearts were not so forgiving, and they could not ignore the secret means used by the two principals. The treatment they are receiving now is what they brought upon themselves. Even Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba, who were watching Jian Qingqiu with cold eyes, did not believe that the two major academies would go well in the future. They believed that those who persisted in wrongdoing would eventually destroy themselves. Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi followed Huan Chuyu into the room. Huan Chuyu sat down on the chair with a calm expression, poured a cup of tea leisurely, took a sip before finally turning his gaze towards Jian Qingqiu and Song Hongxi. "Did you both come here specifically to see me off tomorrow, knowing that I'm leaving?" Hearing the slightly mocking words from Huan Chuyu, Jian Qingqiu's expression was somewhat troubled. He knew in his heart that Huan Chuyu was not a stupid person, and that he already knew what his purpose was for coming here at this moment. But now that the antidote was in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, no matter what Huan Chuyu says, he could only endure it. Indeed, knowing that Elder Huan will be leaving tomorrow, we, as old friends, have come to visit. Jian Qingqiu said slowly. Thank you, said Huan Chuyu indifferently, without much enthusiasm. When Kanglin College fell into a disadvantage back then, they often suffered ridicule and mockery from Jian Qingqiu and the Tsang Hongxi. They didn't hesitate to add insult to injury. Now that he had decided to give up everything, instead of having to swallow his pride, he could take advantage of this opportunity to hold his head up high and breathe freely. He didn't know what the Kanglin Academy would look like in the future, but he could only be sure that he would not regret the decision he made. Seeing Huan Chuyu's cold attitude, Jian Qingqiu and Tsang Hongxi couldn't help but look at each other. Despite having already guessed the possibility of everything before setting off, when it actually happened, they still felt very uncomfortable. Elder Huan, you were really too impulsive that day. We never had any intention of severing ties with Kanglin Academy, said Tsang Hongxi. When Huan Chuyu made this decision, he was also surprised. He didn't expect that Huan Chuyu would be reckless and take extreme measures. Huan Chuyu gave a cold sneer and said, "Isn't this what you have been striving for all these years? Now that I have granted your wish, you are not happy." Hearing Huan Chuyu's merciless words, Tsang Hongxi and Jian Qingqiu's expressions changed slightly. It seems that this time Huan Chuyu has really made up his mind and has no intention of changing his decision at all. Elder Huan, what you said is a bit hurtful, we didn't have such thoughts. Jian Qingqiu said hastily. In the past, Huan Chuyu might have pretended to accept this excuse, but now he didn't care. Slap in the face, you are not welcome, forget it, I know what you have been planning are all these years. Now, I don't care. Kanglin Academy will not compete with you for a little bit of fame. You can do whatever you want. These hypocritical words are unnecessary. Bailey Hongzhuang won't hand over the antidote, and that is our decision. Looking at Jian Qingqiu and Tsang Hongxi's hypocritical faces again, Huan Chuyu didn't even have the want to deal with them. That was all there was to say. Bailey Hongzhuang had already made up her mind, no matter how much the royal family wanted to salvage the situation, she would not waver. Last time when Chu Jiyo came with the two other people, he made a special effort to understand Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. After learning that Bailey Hongzhuang's decision was so firm, he understood. As for Jian Qingqiu and Tsang Hongxi, he had no relationship with them anymore, and he was not willing to pay too much attention to them either. Jian Qingqiu and Tsang Hongxi were stunned, they didn't expect Huan Chuyu to speak so bluntly. In this way, the two of them didn't know what to say at all. Huan Chuyu had completely closed off all possible room for maneuver. Elder Huan, what you're saying disregards all the friendship and emotions we've built up over the years. Jian Qingqiu's face looked a bit unpleasant. He never expected Huan Chuyu's attitude would be so resolute. However, listening to Jian Qingqiu's words, Huan Chuyu's face remained unchanged. From your actions over the years, our past relationship has long disappeared. Elder Huan, you've gone too far. Tsang Hongxi couldn't help but frown. All three of them had prestigious identities, and given the current status of the Kanglin Academy, Huan Chuyu should have been more polite to them. Huan Chuyu sneered. Tsang Hongxi hadn't figured out the true situation yet. There was no reason to even pretending him at this point. I've gone too far, so what? Haven't you done many excessive things over the years? The principles of the academies throughout history have always aimed to develop cultivators, but you have attached yourselves to the royal family for your own fame. Perhaps now you have great fame, but one day, when your power is completely usurped by the royal family, and you become their puppet, I will be happy to see it. Now, you may leave. Huan Chuyu stood up, his face, which had always been kind and soft, was already full of indifference at now. Their paths had diverged. Although they are both principals of academies, they had very different ideas, and there was no point in continuing to maintain that hypocritical friendship. Jian Qingqiu and Tsang Hongxi's faces were livid. This was simply a blatant slap in the face from Huan Chuyu. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe that Huan Chuyu, who usually had a gentle and kind expression, could say such words. However, Jian Qingqiu's heart couldn't help but feel heavy. Huan Chuyu's words were tantamount to smashing a stone in his heart again. As Huan Chuyu said, the involvement of the royal family's power was truly terrifying. Nowadays, the royal family's influence at Lingyin Academy was less than that of the principal himself. Perhaps, in the future, Lingyin Academy will become an academy completely owned by the Qingshao Kingdom's royal family, but by the time he realized it, it would be too late. Huan Chuyu has really gone too far, said Song Hongxi with a displeased expression on his face. He had already swallowed his price by coming here today, but Huan Chuyu was still rude. Meticulous, Di Beichen. The next day, as soon as day broke, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up early and started preparing to leave the imperial city of Qingshao Kingdom. Xia Jiqing and the others were in a good mood. Yesterday, they were pleased to see the two principals who were usually arrogant and overbearing, leaving dejectedly. Di Beichen supported Bailey Hongzhuang as they walked out of the inn. Bailey Hongzhuang's demeanor had returned to normal, and no one could tell that she was still injured. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang had a warm and bright smile on her lips. She had been resting in the inn for the past few days, but today, just stepping outside and feeling the brilliant sunshine made her feel exceptionally comfortable. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang walked up to the horse and immediately prepared to mount. Madam, wait. Di Beichen's lips curved into a warm smile as he pulled Bailey Hongzhuang back. Your injuries have not fully healed, and the bumps from a horse are not good for your wounds. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful eyes showed a hint of surprise. Not ride a horse. How will we travel then? Di Beichen reached out and rubbed Bailey Hongzhuang's head, finding her confused expression particularly adorable. Immediately afterwards, a luxurious carriage appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. The carriage was spacious and magnificent, exuding a subtle yet extravagant elegance that immediately revealed its extraordinary quality. I have no objection to your leaving the Qingshao Kingdom, but your injuries require traveling by carriage. Although it is slightly slower than riding a horse, it will have less impact on your injuries. Di Beichen's voice was low and filled with tenderness as he carefully explained everything to Bailey Hongzhuang. He understood that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want everyone to stay under the surveillance of Qingshao Kingdom's royal family, but to him, Bailey Hongzhuang's health was the most important thing. Therefore, this was the only way for them to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes raised slightly, and she saw at a glance the deep and caring gaze full of love from the Di Beichen. Her heart couldn't help but ripple like waves on a lake, surging and spreading out. Xia Jiqing, Zhan Yunfeng, and others all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with envy and teasing. Having an attentive and meticulous husband like Di Beichen is simply the dream of all women. This man, who combines family background, appearance, and strength, and shows such care and consideration for Bailey Hongzhuang, is truly amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with Di Beichen's sparkling and smiling star-like eyes. She nodded slightly and said, "Okay." Di Beichen helped Bailey Hongzhuang onto the carriage. As soon as she got on the carriage, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the entire carriage was lined with Huajin soft satin, which was soft and comfortable and could minimize the impact of bumps. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. She had scarcely seen Di Beichen yesterday during the day. It turns out that he had gone to help her prepare these things. Her heart felt a bit of warmth. Xia Jiqing and the others also noticed the carriage conditions and couldn't help but sigh, taking the opportunity while Di Beichen was returning to the inn to gather around Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, you are so fortunate to be able to find a husband like Di Beichen. It's really a blessing. Zhan Yunfeng gave a thumbs up to Bailey Hongzhuang. An excellent and perfect woman like Hongzhuang deserved to be happy. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly. Why don't we all ride in the carriage together? We don't need it. Xia Jiqing playfully blinked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, this was specially prepared for you by Di Beichen. 3 beasts brought out. Seeing Xia Jiqing and Zhan Yunfeng secretly giggling, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel a little helpless. But a warm smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Bai Shi was comfortably lying on a soft cushion, rolling around and squinting its eyes with a lazy and comfortable appearance. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also jumped down from Bailey Hongzhuang's head, unwilling to be left out. Their bodies transformed into the size of Bai Shi and they also rolled around the carriage. Master, Di Beichen really cares about you, I am satisfied, Xiao He hugged the fruit plate beside him, happily eating the fruit while commenting on Bailey Hongzhuang from time to time. I think so too. Xiao Bai nodded in agreement, especially since Di Beichen had prepared so much delicious food in the carriage. It was extremely satisfied. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the excited Xiao He and Xiao Bai. These 2 foodies always act like children. No matter who gives them food, they always say that person is the best. Bai Shi didn't have a strong craving for fruit, but he just stretched and went to Bailey Hongzhuang to show off his cuteness. After rubbing his little head against her, he asked for a piece of demon crystal. Although food is good, demon crystals are still the most delicious. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. Her contracted beasts were all a bunch of foodies, and Bai Shi ate the least but also the most expensive food. Di Beichen quickly got into the carriage as well. His clear and handsome face revealed a warm and charming smile towards Bailey Hongzhuang. He noticed a hint of helplessness in her expression, and saw the 3 little ones next to her, each holding something and nibbling on it. The smile in his eyes deepened a bit. Sitting beside Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen said, I specially prepared a lot of food for these 3 little guys, so you can rest assured. You are good at winning people's hearts. The 3 of them have all been saying good things about you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly, noticing the handsome and extraordinary man beside her, who she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. The slender eyelashes cast a bit of shadow on her face like a fan, but those eyes, which are as bright as stars, were so dazzling and intoxicating. Di Beichen reached out to embrace Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, the corners of his lips curved upwards. If you want to successfully capture your lady's heart, you naturally need to find a few little helpers. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang laughed silently, but a touch of sincere gratitude appeared in her eyebrows and eyes. Thank you for preparing this for me. Di Beichen's eyes flickered slightly. You are my wife, everything I do for you is only natural. She was such a beautiful woman that he would feel heartache just seeing her frown. Nangong Aochen can't hold on any longer, will Nangong Oi be like a cornered beast? Bailey Hongzhuang leaned against Di Beichen's shoulder, but her gaze was fixed on the outside of the carriage. Nangong Oi's status was held in her hands in such a way, and she was afraid that Nangong Oi would not be able to bear it. In the end, it is not impossible for him to die from the exposure. The majestic ruler of a country, yet he suffered such a great loss because of a student like her. Even his most cherished son is now on the verge of death. He may not be able to bear such humiliation. Don't worry, he doesn't dare. The low and magnetic voice was filled with a reassuring power, as if his presence alone could hold up the sky for Bailey Hongzhuang, easing her worries about everything. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, she always believed what Di Beichen said. Although they experienced some risks by coming to Qingshao Kingdom, fortunately, it has brought her closer to Di Beichen's heart. Blood-stained abyss. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang expected, when their team left the Qingshao Kingdom Imperial City, Nangong Oi could no longer bear it. However, even though he is a ruler of the kingdom, the royal family was not solely governed by him. Even though he wanted to go all out and do something, the elders in the royal family wouldn't allow it. Therefore, he could only watch as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left the imperial city unharmed. Before Bailey Hongzhuang and others left, Nangong Aochen couldn't hold on any longer. Even though the royal family searched for famous doctors, no one could unravel this strange poison. This made Nangong Oi extremely angry. It was unbelievable that the poison produced by a young cultivator could stump so many people. As Bailey Hongzhuang had previously warned, after Nangong Oi stayed with Nangong Aochen often, he began to feel somewhat uncomfortable. The imperial physician diagnosis was that Nangong Oi's condition was the same as Nangong Aochen's. It turned out to be a contagious poison. The entire royal family was shocked. How terrifying would it be to have a contagious poison? It was the crown prince first, and now it is the emperor. The Qingshao kingdom's royal family was really facing a huge crisis this time. Nangong Oi had been skeptical of what Chu Jio and the others had said before, but when this situation really happened, he realized that it was already too late. After learning this news, Chu Jio and other two were shaken. They had always believed what Bailey Hongzhuang said, but when this really happened, they were shocked. It was terrifying that Bailey Hongzhuang actually had such a poison in her possession. While the royal family of the Qingshao kingdom was in such turmoil, Bailey Hongzhuang and others had already left, and they no longer had anything to do with the Qingshao kingdom whatsoever. "Wife, are you planning to go back to Kanglan Academy after leaving Qingshao kingdom?" Di Beichen asked, turning his head and looking at Bailey Hongzhuang tenderly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows slightly and asked, "What do you mean by asking me this? You have already broken through to the Red Realm. There is a place for experience that will be helpful to you, but it is also dangerous. However, I will accompany you. Do you want to go?" Hearing this, a look of interest appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. "What is it?" she asked. "The blood-stained abyss," came the reply. Bailey Hongzhuang thought to herself, she had never heard of the blood-stained abyss, but just hearing its name, she knew that this place was not simple. "What's in the blood-stained abyss?" A look of interest flashed in her black, bright phoenix eyes. She was very interested just from hearing the name. From Di Beichen's gaze, she could tell that this place would be helpful to her, so it would naturally be a very good place, but just from its name, it made her feel a little bloody. The blood-stained abyss is located in a deep abyss in Snow City. Originally, this place was called the Snowfield Abyss, but it was renamed the Blood-Stained Abyss after it was stained with too much blood. The Blood-Stained Abyss is a very peculiar place where many heinous people gather. There are no rules there, and the only law is strength. It's bloody and violent. However, there is a 9-story tower in the blood-stained abyss which holds a mysterious inheritance. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She immediately understood that Di Beichen's purpose for letting her go was to obtain this inheritance. After all, every inheritance has been refined over thousands of tests and trials, so this inheritance should not be simple either. The miraculous inheritance, what kind of inheritance? The delicate and perfect face shone with curiosity and interest. Just listening to Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew that the blood-stained abyss had existed for a long time. To be able to gather so many heinous people there, it was likely that the place was in an area that was not governed by any authority, otherwise such a place would not exist at all. "Madam, since stepping into the Red Realm, you should be aware of the existence of coercion, right?" Di Beichen calmly explained to Bailey Hongzhuang. As he had expected, his wife was very interested in this. Not only did she never feel the slightest bit of fear of the blood in the blood-stained abyss, on the contrary, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear, and was in fact a little impatient. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and said, "Coercion is the suppression of the weak by the strong through their aura. Under this coercion, the strength of the weak will be limited and it will affect their combat effectiveness. For the strong, coercion can be a very advantageous tool. It can create an absolute advantage, as the strong don't even need to make a move. They can just release their coercion and cause trouble for their opponents." "That's right. In this blood-stained abyss, there is a kind of miraculous inheritance similar to coercion. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes brightened a little. How could there be such an inheritance in the world? The three abysses of the Xingxian continent are the blood-stained abyss, the abyss of magic refinement, and the abyss of the sea of bitterness. These three abysses have three inheritances, each of which is very difficult to obtain. Among them, the blood-stained abyss has the lowest threshold for its trial. You can try it if you reach the Red Realm cultivation level. Over the years, after numerous discoveries by cultivators, they determined that only the Red Realm cultivation level has the greatest possibility of inheritance. The higher the cultivation level, the less likely one will be able to obtain the inheritance. Hearing Di Beichen's description, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was shaken. She never thought that there were these three abysses in the Xingxian continent. Just hearing the names gave her the feeling that these three abysses were not simple, and the existence of such an inheritance was really strange. So, does that mean only cultivators at the Red Realm can attempt to obtain the heritage of the blood-stained abyss? Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Usually, the stronger the cultivator's strength, the easier it would be for them to obtain the inheritance. However, it was strange that there were such cultivation restrictions in the blood-stained abyss. Di Beichen nodded slightly and said, among the three great abysses, the blood-stained abyss has the most people trying, so it is relatively easier to obtain the inheritance. Blood-stained abyss, she has taken a fancy to it. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was so interested, Di Beichen continued to describe it to her. The abyss of magic refinement also has a kind of inheritance, but it can only be attempted after reaching the blue realm. Because the threshold is extremely high, there are far fewer people in the abyss of magic refinement than in the blood-stained abyss. However, the cultivators who appear in the abyss of magic refinement are all strong, and a careless move could cost them their lives. The inheritance obtained in the blood-stained abyss is the blood chi aura. Once released, the opponent will be surrounded by endless blood chi. Humans instinctively resist blood, and such a dense blood chi can completely crush the opponent's spirit. Once the blood chi aura is used, the opponent's strength will also be suppressed to a certain extent, but the specific situation depends on the opponent's willpower. What a powerful chi aura! This is a great weapon for cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood the power of this blood chi aura. In combat, this alone could intimidate many opponents. Di Beichen smiled faintly, playing with Bailey Hongzhuang's soft delicate hands and slender fingers. You seem to be particularly interested in these things, he said. I am a cultivator, so naturally, I am very interested in these things, Bailey Hongzhuang replied, shaking her little head nonchalantly. She was in love with this blood chi aura. Naturally, there is no need to say much about the power of this blood aura. One can tell by the number of people in the blood-stained abyss. However, both the blood-stained abyss and the abyss of magic refinement are equally bloody and cruel, and countless people die there every year. So, after you go there, you must follow me closely. There was a flash of nervousness and seriousness in Di Beichen's eyes, and even the hand holding Bailey Hongzhuang tightened. He understood that it was almost impossible for a cultivator not to encounter danger in the process of growth, but the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang suffered such serious injuries this time made him extremely anxious. The danger of going to the blood-stained abyss this time was inevitable, but with him around, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not be in danger. Sensing Di Beichen's tension and worry, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes softened a little, and she wrapped her hands around Di Beichen's neck, leaning on his chest. Don't worry, I'll listen to you. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's gentle words, Di Beichen's tense body relaxed a bit. He never wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang get hurt again. The inheritance of the blood-stained abyss is the blood chi aura, so what is the inheritance of the abyss of magic refinement? Bailey Hongzhuang asked curiously. The inheritance of abyss of magic refinement is the murderous aura. The power of the murderous aura is more terrifying than the blood chi aura. Once the murderous aura is released, the opponent will be surrounded by endless killing intent. The deterrent power is greater and the lethality is stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. The dense killing intent alone was enough to make a person fearful, and when the killing intent formed into an aura, she could imagine the extent of its power. However, there have only been 3 individuals who were able to obtain the murderous aura in the entire Xingxian continent, and no one else has appeared again. Di Beichen's voice was filled with a bit of emotion. This kind of inheritance makes people jealous, but it is also incredibly difficult to obtain. Bailey Hongzhuang appeared calm and indifferent. The existence of such an aura was already extremely extraordinary. Although it was only 3 people, the strength of these 3 people had greatly improved. These 3 people should all be famous figures of the Xingxian continent, right? Not bad. Between you and me, there is no need to worry or hide anything. These 3 people achieved great fame in the history of Xingxian continent, but it's been a long time, and they are no longer in this world. Di Beichen's lips curved into a warm and charming smile, and his arms tightened around Bailey Hongzhuang. Normally, Bailey Hongzhuang always had a strong and resilient appearance, but now her gaze filled with curiosity made him feel loved and happy. His Hongzhuang, his wife, would only show such a side to him. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head lightly, and a glimmer of contemplation appeared in her clear eyes. It seems that 1,000 years is enough time for many things to happen. In her past, the 3 abysses did not exist, but the Xingxian continent was a vast territory and had abundant resources, always containing many hidden places. If she hadn't liked exploring back then, she wouldn't have traveled here because of the Ring of Chaos. Since you're so familiar with the blood-stained abyss, have you been there? Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow over her phoenix eyes. It seems that Di Beichen must be someone who frequently undergoes training and experiences. Even though Di Beichen is the young master of Tiangang's sect, the higher his status, the more heavier the burden. In a sect, how numerous are the outstanding cultivators? Di Beichen can only solidify his position by constantly improving his own strength and not letting anyone catch up. Come to think of it, based on his thorough understanding of the blood-stained abyss, he must have been there. Di Beichen's lips curled up in a warm and mellow smile, as his gaze, clear and focused, looked beyond the carriage, faintly revealing a hint of yearning and nostalgia. Back then, it was Master who told me about the situation in the blood-stained abyss. He was also the one who took me there for the first time. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichen's expression, and her eyes gradually softened. It seems that Di Beichen's master is a significant figure to him, both as a father and a teacher, holding great importance in his life. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that all along, she only knew that Di Beichen was raised by his master, but she had never heard anything about Di Beichen's parents. Why is that? For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was filled with various thoughts, but she couldn't be sure if her conjecture was correct. When Di Beichen refocused, he noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's distraction. Affectionately, he reached out and waved his hand in front of Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Wife, why are you thinking so seriously? Bailey Hongzhuang snapped out of her thoughts, a sweet smile appearing on her lips. It's nothing. Although Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything, Di Beichen noticed the flash of doubt and complexity in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang must have some thoughts. Di Beichen's expression was gentle, and his thin lips parted lightly. Wife, if there is anything you wish to say, you can tell me. Between you and me, there is no need to worry or hide anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart stirred slightly. Di Beichen had always been able to understand her emotions. Although she had hidden them very quickly, Di Beichen still noticed. However, it's not that Di Beichen was skilled at grasping people's hearts, but rather that he paid special attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen paid attention to her every move. That was why he caught the fleeting change in her eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang leaned on Di Beichen's shoulder, her left hand wrapped around his waist. Only then did Bailey Hongzhuang raise her head and look at him. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Di Beichen knew that he was right. The broad palm indulgently rubbed Bailey Hongzhuang's head and said, "Ask me." Life experience. Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed the expression on Di Beichen's face and knew that her thoughts had been seen through. Despite that, there was a trace of relief in her heart. Ultimately, he understood her. "Beichen, I only know about your master, but I have never heard about your parents." With Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Di Beichen's gaze suddenly froze for a moment. His dazzling star-like eyes were suddenly shrouded in darkness, obscuring their former brilliance. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately felt that the question she asked was inappropriate, and that this question had struck a chord in Di Beichen's heart. As she was thinking that Di Beichen did not need to answer, the shadows in Di Beichen's eyes dispersed, and he reached out and held her small hand. The oppressive and frozen atmosphere dissipated in an instant, and Di Beichen's voice stayed soft, but there was a faint tinge of depression and sadness. Other than seeing Di Beichen pretend to be sad before, this was the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang had seen Di Beichen's truly sad. It was as if an invisible dark cloud had enveloped him, blocking his original brilliance. "I am an abandoned infant. My master encountered me during his journey and brought me to our sect," Di Beichen said in a calm tone, as if he were talking about an insignificant matter. However, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that this matter is probably a knot Di Beichen's heart. Any abandoned child would want to know the reason for his abandonment. He clearly possesses such excellence, so why would parents heartlessly abandon him? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly discovered that her background was unexpectedly very similar to Di Beichen's. Until now, they had both never seen their biological parents. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly tightened her hold on Di Beichen's hands. For this man who has always tried to bring her warmth, she wants to also use her own strength to bring him warmth. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's gesture, Di Beichen also hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightly. Perhaps it is a pity not to know who his parents are, but for now, having Bailey Hongzhuang by his side was enough. Everything is still unknown. It wasn't long ago that I discovered I am not Bailey Jintao's biological daughter, and although I have some clues about my true identity, it is unclear. Since I am going to find my parents, you can also try. The crisp and sweet voice conveyed comfort and concern. Even after spending so much time together, this was the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had seen Di Beichen like this. And to her, having experienced things like time travel, what is impossible? Perhaps in the future, they will also discover Di Beichen's true identity and find his parents. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice had a singular effect on Di Beichen, and he quickly recovered from that emotion. "Over the years, my master has also helped me investigate, but there have been no results." Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes changed a bit. Even Di Beichen's master, with the identity of the Tiangang sect's master, failed to uncover the identity of Di Beichen's parents. So, it would be equally difficult for them to find them. "I believe that your parents, like my parents, must have had compelling reasons to abandon you." In her dark and luminous eyes, there shimmered a resolute and believing light. Bailey Hongzhuang always believed that parents would not easily abandon their children. She wanted to know what had happened to Lan Yunxiao and his wife back then. Worried, Dongfang Yu. During this rushed journey, everyone's mood was significantly lighter compared to when they arrived. Although they didn't know whether Huan Chuyo's decision was good or bad for Kanglan Academy, they did feel much more relaxed. How could the atmosphere of Lingyin Academy be as relaxed as Kanglan Academy? The hierarchical system there was too strict, and ordinary cultivators couldn't even lift their heads in front of the royal descendants. In fact, they didn't think the royal descendants were particularly outstanding. Weren't they all defeated by Hongzhuang? At least as students, they were grateful that Kanglan Academy was not like Lingyin Academy. Dinner. Vice Principal, by distancing yourself from the two major academies this time, will the principal disagree when he finds out? There was a hint of worry in Dong Fengyu's expression. He had been staying in the house and hadn't experienced such risks before. Speaking of which, he also has some regrets in his heart. At such a dangerous moment, he had not been with everyone. With Dong Fengyu's question, everyone's eyes were fixed on Huan Chuyu. They were also worried about this question, but they had never dared to ask it. Huan Chuyu's gaze swept over Dong Fengyu and the others, and after noticing their worried expressions, he smiled lightly. The principal won't object. In fact, over the years, the principal has also had this plan. We speculated about this possibility when we set off for Lingyin Academy. You don't need to worry about these things. The current situation at Lingyin Academy is not good either. Huan Chuyu appeared carefree. Over the years, he and Rentian Xiong had been concerned about the situation at Kanglin Academy. He believed that Rentian Xiong would also feel much relief upon hearing this news. Besides, Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding performance in the Academy Exchange Conference had brought glory to Kanglin Academy. This result was already much better than they had expected. Now, Lingyin Academy is so closely tied to the Qingshao Kingdom's royal family that it has become a subsidiary. The percentage of ordinary students is getting smaller and smaller, while the children of the royals and nobles will all cultivate there. In the future, the cultivators trained by Lingyin Academy will thank the Qingshao Kingdom, not Lingyin Academy. Jian Qingqiu has always wanted to spread his reputation throughout the Xingxian continent, but if this trend continues, perhaps the students of Lingyin Academy will only know who the Emperor of Qingshao Kingdom is, but they don't remember his name. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a calm and determined smile. Jian Qingqiu had been driven by selfish interests all these years and couldn't even understand these things. Most of the people within the royal family were players of power and schemes. How could they make a losing deal? The Qingshao Kingdom's royal family had only promised some benefits, and Jian Qingqiu had already been deceived. In the end, it would be the most detrimental deal of his life. She believed that when Jian Qingqiu realized it, he would surely regret it. As a former head of a prestigious family in her previous life, these tactics were familiar to her. With just a little understanding, she could grasp what the royal family was truly plotting. As the principal of the academy, if he couldn't ignore the lure of fame and fortune, he would ultimately end up in such a situation. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Dong Fengyu and the others revealed a trace of shock on their faces. Upon careful consideration, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words made a lot of sense. One wrong step, all losses. Huan Chuyu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang appreciatively. He didn't expect that despite her young age, Bailey Hongzhuang could understand the intricacies so clearly. It was truly rare. The vice principal is not worried at all. Once Lingyin Academy and Beihai Academy become vassals of the royal family, Kanglin Academy will be the sacred land in the eyes of the ordinary cultivators of the Xingxian continent. It will never been wrong to stick to the original intention of establishing the school. Di Beichen's eyes were serious. As the young master of the Tiangang sect, his vision was naturally not narrow. Perhaps in a short period of time, Kanglin Academy's situation would decline, but it wouldn't take long for this situation to completely change. By then, it was highly likely that Kanglin Academy would leapfrog the other two academies, and its reputation would far exceed that of other academies. Huan Chuyu nodded slightly. That's right, that's exactly what I think. His thoughts were the same as Di Beichen's. As long as they endured this period of time, Kanglin Academy would surely bloom with a brilliance that it had never had before. After hearing the exchange between Di Beichen and Huan Chuyu, everyone realized that the vice principal had already thought about all this before making this decision. Their previous worries were really unnecessary. Looking at Di Beichen again, everyone felt a touch of emotion. The young master of the sect was indeed extraordinary, with a farsightedness beyond ordinary people. However, they were more curious about Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen's identity explained his exceptional vision, but why was Bailey Hongzhuang able to see through all of this so easily? They never thought about these issues before, and they had never cared about the interests between Lingyin Academy and the Qingshao Kingdom's royal family. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled at each other. Kanglin Academy was the academy they both attended, so naturally, they hoped for a better future for Kanglin Academy. I believe that Principal Jian must be regretting it now. He may not have felt the gradual encroachment of the royal family on Lingyin Academy before, but this time the royal family's actions were decided without consulting him. He should have realized it. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold. They had reached this point entirely because of Jian Qingqiu's own actions. Even if problems arose, he couldn't blame anyone else. Now, Lingyin Academy can no longer change its fate. When it was moved from Lingyin Academy to the Qingshao Kingdom's imperial city, this outcome was already predetermined. Even if Jian Qingqiu wants to change all this, he is already powerless. Huan Chuyu shook his head slightly. There was a time when he and Jian Qingqiu had the same principles. And now, all that was gone. If Jian Qingqiu wanted to leave, the royal family would not allow it, and the entire Lingyin Academy was situated there, he couldn't take it away. One wrong step, and the whole game is lost. Vice Principal Tsang may still have a chance to change. Di Beichen said slowly. Lingyin Academy was now too close to the royal family and couldn't change its outcome, but although Beihai Academy had the idea of seeking refuge with the royal family, it hadn't fully integrated yet. If they wanted to leave now, there might still be a chance to successfully withdraw. That's right. Huan Chuyu smiled faintly. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were truly a perfect match. They would undoubtedly soar to great heights in the future. With such insight, they wouldn't easily be deceived when they traveled around the world in the future. Wife, I'll take care of it. In fact, everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had imagined. Jian Qingqiu had already anticipated that something was amiss on the day of the finals, but by the time he realized it, it seemed like it was already too late. As the vice principal, Zhang Hongxi naturally wasn't a fool and, after careful consideration, he understood the key issue. Although he wanted the academy to prosper and for him to make a name for himself, if the academy became a subsidiary of the royal family, then what would be the meaning of his role as vice principal? Therefore, when Jian Qingqiu said he wanted to discuss future cooperation with him, Zhang Hongxi declined, citing urgent matters at the academy, and hurriedly left with the academy team without even meeting Jian Qingqiu. He had to return to the academy to sort out the crucial issues. Continuing to negotiate with Jian Qingqiu would only entangle him further. Jian Qingqiu was not a good person either. Naturally, when he found himself in a predicament, he wanted to bring down the Beihai Academy as well. However, he wouldn't be so foolish. After crossing the border of the Qingshao Kingdom, the crisis of Qingshao Kingdom was completely resolved. We've finally crossed the borders of Qingshao Kingdom. This feels amazing. On horseback, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but spread her arms wide. The days in the Qingshao Kingdom had been so oppressive, but now that they had left, she felt the air was refreshing. We're finally going back to the academy. Our journey was truly full of danger and excitement. Zhang Yunfeng had a joyful smile on her face. During this time, her relationship with Xia Jiqing had also improved. Everyone was extremely happy. They probably wouldn't return to the Qingshao Kingdom ever again. Amongst everyone, Lu Qingyue was the quietest, but even at this moment, her beautiful face blossomed with a smile. However, at that moment, the carriage came to a slow stop, and Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang stepped down from the carriage together. Seeing this, a hint of confusion appeared in everyone's eyes, wondering what Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were doing. Hongzhuang, is there something you want to tell us? Xia Jiqing asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her gaze falling on Di Beichen beside her. Di Beichen immediately understood and looked at everyone. Hongzhuang and I are temporarily bidding farewell to everyone here. Di Beichen's voice was warm and sunny, and his flawless face displayed a faint smile. Upon hearing this, everyone was momentarily stunned. Aren't you going back to the academy? Hongzhuang and I are planning to go somewhere for some training. We'll return to the academy in a few days. Everyone, go back first, Di Beichen explained. Only then did everyone understand. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were actually husband and wife, so they must have some things they needed to take care of. They wouldn't inquire further. Lu Huaiyan and Fu Hongbo couldn't help but look at Huan Chuyu. It was normal for academy students to leave the academy from time to time, so they didn't find it strange. Huan Chuyu's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. These two had obviously made this decision a while ago. With Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's abilities, he believed that they had already made thorough plans. Since that was the case, he naturally wouldn't stop them. Take care on your journey. Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries haven't fully healed yet. Di Beichen, you should take good care of her. Di Beichen chuckled lightly. Vice Principal, rest assured. I won't let anything happen to my wife. Departure, Blood-stained abyss. The group listened to Di Beichen's resolute words, a faint smile lingering in their eyes. It was well known that Bailey Hongzhuang held a special place in Di Beichen's heart. With Di Beichen by her side, there was no need for them to worry. Xia Jiqing held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her beautiful face showing a hint of reluctance and regret. Hongzhuang, if you don't come back to the academy with us, I'll be bored. Since meeting Bailey Hongzhuang during the academy's enrollment, Xia Jiqing had considered her as her best friend. She had already gotten used to Bailey Hongzhuang's company over the past time period. Now that they were finally returning to the academy, Bailey Hongzhuang had to leave, and Xia Jiqing couldn't help but feel a bit lonely. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder, her exquisite face radiating a bright smile. Beichen and I are just going out to gain experience. We will definitely come back to the academy. I hope that when I return, you will have already broken through to the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang cherished her friendship with Xia Jiqing. Upon hearing this, Xia Jiqing's slightly disappointed face once again brightened with a smile. I will definitely work hard to cultivate. I'll be waiting for you to come back to the Kanglin Academy. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Alright, it won't be long before I return to the academy to find you. Zhang Yunfeng also walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Hongzhuang, be careful during your journey. We'll all be waiting for you and Beichen to come back to the Kanglin Academy. I will, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. The group didn't say much more. After a simple farewell, Xia Jiqing and the others continued towards the Kanglin Academy, while Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen got in the carriage once again and headed towards the blood-stained abyss. Beichen, how far is the blood-stained abyss from here? Bailey Hongzhuang looked up, her beautiful eyes filled with some curiosity. The blood-stained abyss, formerly known as the Snowy Abyss, was supposed to be a place covered in ice and snow. The blood-stained abyss is located in the Tianlong Snow Mountain, quite far from here. But once we reach the next neighboring country, we'll take a flying beast, which will make the journey much faster. Di Beichen gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang with tender and doting eyes. This time, they would go together for this experience. Since they met up, they had mostly been with the cultivators from the academy. It was rare for them to spend time alone like this. He really enjoyed these moments alone with Bailey Hongzhuang. A hint of understanding appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes, and a gentle smile curved her lips. By the time we reach the neighboring country, my injuries should be completely healed. It was all thanks to Di Beichen's arrangements. The carriage ride had been much smoother, and her injuries had been healing steadily these past few days. Once they arrived at the neighboring country, she would be back to her usual self. This way, it wouldn't affect their upcoming journey. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and soft hand, his left arm embracing her shoulder. His black pupils sparkled with satisfaction and delight. "I can rest assured when your injuries fully recover," Di Beichen said with a gentle smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile remained, but her gaze shifted to the front of the carriage. "The coachman has been with us for quite some time. How did you arrange this?" "I've already talked to him. Once we reach the neighboring country, he can return to the Qingshao kingdom. He has worked hard during this time, and I won't mistreat him." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. "That's good to hear." Arrival, Tianyan Kingdom. For others, traveling is undoubtedly a very boring thing, but for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, it was definitely not. While in the carriage, the two of them never stopped cultivating. After this trip to the Qingshao Kingdom, Bailey Hongzhuang had a greater desire for strength. If Di Beichen hadn't rushed over at that time, they would have been completely defeated. Therefore, their own strength was important. She clearly remembered the envy in everyone's eyes when Di Beichen said she was his wife. This kind of envy was like her picking up a pie that fell from the sky. It wasn't obvious to people, rather, this kind of envy meant that in the eyes of others, she and Di Beichen were not a match. It was like a prince falling in love with a commoner, and it was the prince who had crossed the huge disparity to be by her side. She admitted that it was true, but now she only hoped that one day she could stand in front of Di Beichen and everyone would look at them with a sense of inevitability. Just like everyone thought that Di Beichen and Han Xiling were naturally a pair, what she wanted was for everyone to feel that she and Di Beichen were naturally a pair. This was Bailey Hongzhuang's ego. "Beichen, did you come alone this time? Is He Mu not here?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen curiously. He Mu was Di Beichen's secret guard, and back when they were in the Funhua kingdom, He Mu had always been by Di Beichen's side. However, ever since seeing Di Beichen at the Kanglin Academy, she rarely saw He Mu, and he didn't appear this time either, which was a bit strange. "I sent He Mu to take care of something. It's just the two of us for now." A foxy sly light flickered in Di Beichen's eyes. He wasn't stupid. It was rare to have a chance to be alone with Hongzhuang, so how could he let He Mu disturb them? However, there was indeed something he needed He Mu to take care of this time. Since learning that Han Xiling had hired an assassin to deal with Hongzhuang, he had decided. Han Xiling was his junior sister, and their relationship had existed for many years, but Bailey Hongzhuang was the woman he loved the most. If Han Xiling made a move against Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be in complete disregard of their relationship over the years. Sending He Mu away was his way of going back to the Tiangang sect and letting Han Xiling know his stance. If Han Xiling stopped, they could at least maintain a superficial friendship. But if Han Xiling persisted, he wouldn't be polite when they met again. Hearing Di Beichen's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't think too much about it. As the young master of the Tiangang sect, Di Beichen naturally had a lot of things to take care of, and He Mu had always helped him with his tasks. Otherwise, given Di Beichen's busy schedule, he wouldn't have been able to accompany her all the time. After 10 days of traveling, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen finally arrived in another country near the Qingshao Kingdom, the Tianyan Kingdom. The Tianyan Kingdom, like the Qingshao Kingdom, was also a major power and had comparable strength. They had maintained a delicate balance over the years. This Tianyan Kingdom was also the place that the Beihai Academy had previously relied on, and it wasn't far from the Beihai Academy. However, their thoughts might change after Zhang Hongxi returned to the Beihai Academy this time. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen got out of the carriage. After these days of recuperation, Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries had completely healed. People walking out of a painting. After Di Beichen gave the coachman enough money, he returned with the carriage to the Qingshao Kingdom. "Hongzhuang, let's go," he said. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head and saw the golden sunlight shining on Di Beichen's tall and graceful figure. He appeared like a character stepping out of a painting, handsome and elegant. Di Beichen walked up to Bailey Hongzhuang, and his shadow enveloped her. His eyes, as bright as stars, were filled with a hint of laughter, warm as the breeze. Naturally, his large hand held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand, and they walked together towards the city. Bailey Hongzhuang held Di Beichen's hand. His broad palm, hardened from years of wielding a sword, gave her an indescribable sense of security. This Qishui city has flying beasts. We'll go there later, Di Beichen said, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with a charming and sunny smile. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head, displaying a bright and radiant smile. All right. Since she started following Di Beichen, he had already made all the arrangements. In the past, when she was alone, she had to bear everything herself. But now, having a man who could warm her heart and take care of everything gave her an indescribable sense of happiness. We've been sitting in the carriage for so many days, and I'm sure you're tired. Let's go to a restaurant for lunch, then explore Qishui City. Let's have a good rest tonight and set off tomorrow. How does that sound? Di Beichen softly asked. They had been sitting in the carriage for many days, and Bailey Hongzhuang had been resting due to her broken rib. Walking would be good for her. I'll follow your lead, Bailey Hongzhuang replied without hesitation, smiling. She understood why Di Beichen had made this decision. However, he was right, as lying down for so many days had made her feel uncomfortable all over. Now that her injuries were healed, she wanted to move around. Food, food, food. Xiao He and Xiao Bai clapped their hands, their faces filled with excitement. They didn't care about anything else, only food interested them. The lively shouts of vendors on both sides of the street reached Bailey Hongzhuang's and Di Beichen's ears. They had been traveling through the forest, and it had been quiet everywhere. Hearing such lively sounds now lifted their spirits. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen casually entered a restaurant. As soon as they walked in, the rich aroma of food hit their noses, arousing their appetites. The people who were eating looked astonished when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Wow, these two look like characters stepping out of a painting. I have never seen such good-looking people before. Just by looking at them, you can tell they are not ordinary. They must be rich and noble. But they truly make a perfect couple. We've never had such good-looking people in Qishui City before. Di Beichen asked the waiter for a private room and went upstairs with Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were already eager to eat and had no reservations about enjoying their food in the private room. After spending this time together, Di Beichen had a clear understanding of the temperaments of these two contract beasts. Only to the amazement of the waiter, Di Beichen ordered a large table full of dishes. Sir, how many people are there? The waiter looked at the list of dishes he had recorded and couldn't help but ask. 2, Di Beichen replied calmly. But, isn't this too much food? This amount of food would be more than enough for 5 people to eat. Di Beichen's stare narrowed, focusing on the waiter. Feeling Di Beichen's gaze, the waiter felt an invisible pressure weighing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. I was just worried that the 2 guests wouldn't be able to finish it and it would go to waste. The waiter stammered, never having experienced this kind of pressure before. He didn't expect this guest to be so terrifying, indicating his extraordinary status. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed the waiter's expression and then turned her gaze on Di Beichen. In fact, Di Beichen hadn't even released his own aura. There was just a certain kind of person who could intimidate others with just a glance, and simply sitting quietly could exert immense pressure on people. No, it's fine, Di Beichen's voice remained gentle. You can go now, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly. Qishui City was just a border town of Tianyan Kingdom, and it was clear that this waiter had never encountered any influential figures before, so his service was poor. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the waiter breathed a sigh of relief and quickly left. When Di Beichen had just entered, he was talking and laughing with Bailey Hongzhuang, and he didn't feel that Di Beichen's aura was particularly astonishing. But just now, with that slight sensation, he was drenched in cold sweat. It seemed that an extraordinary figure had come to the restaurant today. Thinking of this, the waiter's speed increased a bit. The food had to be served quickly, otherwise, he wouldn't have a good outcome if he offended them. After the waiter left, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze also fell on Di Beichen. Her lips curled up into a faint smile. "Beichen, you really scared the waiter just now." Di Beichen shrugged his shoulders. "I only show a gentle demeanor when I'm dealing with my wife." "Your way of speaking has improved lately." Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichen, her eyes and brows clearly showing joy. "I only speak the truth." Baisher had already sat down next to Bailey Hongzhuang. It had been sitting in the carriage all these days and was quite bored. Now it finally didn't have to ride in the carriage anymore, and Baisher felt lively and happy. Before long, the waiter nervously brought the food and wine to the table and quickly left, as if he thought Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would eat him if he lingered for a moment. Seeing the waiter's behavior, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. He was too timid. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had also grown in size and sat with Baisher in a row. "Let's eat," Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. This was her first time eating in a restaurant with the three beasts. Usually, she would buy the food and bring it back to their residence for Xiao He and Xiao Bai to eat. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were obviously very excited. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they no longer held back, extending their claws and starting to eat. This warm food was really delicious. Bailey Hongzhuang doted on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. These two little guys had suffered quite a bit. However, while Bailey Hongzhuang was looking at Xiao He and Xiao Bai, Di Beichen was doting on Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes filled with affection. On the street, watching the excitement on the moon, above the willow branches, a cool breeze flowed like water. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked the streets of Chishui City. It was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang was full of energy. She had been resting in the carriage and didn't want to continue resting at the inn. Therefore, she decided to take a stroll on the streets with Di Beichen. Various specialty snacks and cosmetics were sold along the street. Many young girls and men were leisurely strolling by the roadside, and they occasionally caught glimpses of affectionate glances exchanged between couples. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand as they walked slowly. In the entire Chishui city, perhaps only the two of them dared to hold hands so boldly. Therefore, when those shy and timid young people saw Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, they couldn't help but show a look of shock. If it were someone else, such behavior would undoubtedly be criticized for being improper and disregarding social norms. However, when they saw the appearance of Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, they all fell silent. This was no ordinary couple, and their hearts couldn't help but feel envious. When would they also be able to be with their loved ones like them? Bailey Hongzhuang also felt the stares of the people around her focused on her and Di Beichen holding hands, but she didn't mind. To her, Di Beichen was the person she wanted to spend her life with, and those stares were meaningless. As for Di Beichen, he didn't care about those stares at all. Normally, countless gazes had been on him, and he had long become accustomed to them and unaffected by them. "Wife, it will take some time for us to fly on a flying beast to the blood abyss. Let's buy some dry rations first." Di Beichen turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and gently asked for her opinion. "Okay," Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It was a good opportunity for her to buy some things as well. Just from Di Beichen's words, she already understood the danger of the blood-stained abyss. It was a good idea to be prepared for any unexpected situations. After all, anything could happen when traveling, especially in a place like the blood-stained abyss where evil people gathered. Let's go over there. Di Beichen pointed to a shop not far away, but Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the pharmacy to her left. Beichen, you go to buy the dry rations first. I'll go to the pharmacy and buy some medicinal herbs, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. After the incident in the Qingshao kingdom, she realized the importance of being prepared with some poison and medicinal pills. If she hadn't impulsively developed poison back then, she wouldn't have achieved such results when dealing with the royal family of the Qingshao kingdom. Although the probability of using such things in daily life was low, they could play a significant role when needed. Upon hearing this, Di Beichen nodded slightly. All right, I'll come find you after I've finished buying. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, knowing that she wouldn't take much time choosing the medicinal herbs. The medicinal herbs she wanted to buy this time were not precious or rare, so the shopkeeper quickly prepared them for her. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the pharmacy, she noticed that Di Beichen hadn't returned yet. At the same time, she was also attracted by some commotion not far away. You little brat, you still want to escape? I'll make sure to beat you to death. Crack. The sound of a whip cracking followed by a woman's scream reached Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. She walked slowly towards the front, only to see a crowd surrounding the scene, eager to watch the spectacle. Girl, please! A woman wearing a light green dress was seen falling to the ground. Her fair and beautiful face revealed fear and nervousness, with teary eyes that stubbornly refused to fall. I spent a lot of money to buy you. If you try to escape, I'll break your legs. In front of the woman, a burly man looked at her with a fierce expression, holding a long whip in his hand. Evidently, the whip marks on the woman's body were inflicted by this strong man. I beg you, please let me go. Fear filled the woman's eyes as the whip became her nightmare. Upon hearing her words, the burly man sneered, let you go? That would mean I've wasted my money. Crack. In the next moment, the man lashed the woman again with the whip. She gasped and her delicate body trembled uncontrollably, her face turning pale. The onlookers couldn't help but feel pity upon witnessing this scene. What a fine young lady, ending up in the hands of such a person. It seems she's doomed. Yes, this man has no regard for her delicate beauty. It's heartbreaking to see the whip strike her like that. What a shame. The crowd shook their heads, feeling both compassion and helplessness. The woman's gaze fell on the people around her. Please, I beg you, save me. As the woman spoke, many men around her considered stepping forward. If they rescued her now, there was a good chance she would belong to one of them. However, the intense gaze of the burly man swept over the crowd, making it clear that he wouldn't let anyone off the hook if they dared to intervene. Feeling the gaze of the burly man, the men who had initially wanted to step forward retracted their steps. As beautiful as the woman was, losing one's life made everything pointless. Seeing the hesitant expressions of the onlookers, the woman's face grew even paler, and a hint of despair appeared in her eyes. What are you all looking at? Leave! The burly man angrily shouted, glaring at the surrounding crowd. In response, the people dispersed. It wasn't a good idea to get involved in someone else's trouble for the sake of mere spectacle. Bailey Hongzhuang, too, lacked any extra sympathy. After briefly observing the scene, she prepared to leave. Di Beichen should be looking for her. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to depart, her feet suddenly couldn't move. Furrowing her eyebrows, Bailey Hongzhuang looked down and noticed that the woman in the green dress had unknowingly clutched onto her foot. Miss, please save me. The woman looked at Bailey Hongzhuang desperately, as if Bailey Hongzhuang were her last lifeline. However, compared to the pleading of the woman in the green dress, Bailey Hongzhuang remained indifferent and distant. She had no extra sympathy, nor any interest in this kind of drama. Let go, Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly. The woman seemed taken aback by Bailey Hongzhuang's cold and resolute response. She hesitated for a moment, but her hands clutching Bailey Hongzhuang's right foot didn't let go. Instead, she continued to plead desperately. "Miss, I beg you, otherwise he will make me wish for death." "Buy it now, 500 gold coins." For a moment, everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, a touch of shock couldn't help but appear in their eyes. Just by looking at this girl in a green dress, they already found her to be beautiful, but this girl in a white dress was truly stunning and breathtaking. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's cold words, the crowd's feelings changed somewhat. This girl is so beautiful, but why is she so ruthless? The girl in the green dress is so pitiful, yet she can still speak so coldly. It's really disheartening. No choice. That man is so fierce, and the girl in the white dress is helpless as well. Everyone held their own opinions, whether it was admiration, disdain, or deep emotions, but no one stood up. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly cold as she swept her gaze over the people around her who were gossiping. These people only knew how to talk coolly, but why didn't they stand up for justice? The people who had criticized Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but close their mouths after seeing her gaze. The girl's eyes were too intimidating, directly intimidating them. Snap! The man lashed the girl in the green dress again, saying, "You dare not let go again, I will beat you to death right here on the street." However, the girl only looked at the man with resentment, her hands still tightly holding onto Bailey Hongzhuang. "Miss, I beg you." Snap! 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 The man mercilessly whipped the girl in the green dress, his appearance showing signs of anger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the pitiful girl at her feet, and a glint of interest flashed in her phoenix-like eyes. Logically speaking, with so many people present earlier, no one cared about the girl in the green dress, but she happened to seek her out, and she was so stubborn. It was truly interesting. A gleam of brightness passed through her clear eyes, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. She also wanted to know what this girl was up to. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the burly man. "How much did you spend to buy this woman?" Hesitation flashed in the burly man's eyes as he listened to Bailey Hongzhuang's words. "You want to buy her?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Didn't you buy her before?" "I'll buy her from you. But I spent a lot of money to bring this girl from afar. Shouldn't it cost a little more?" The man looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, trying to understand her bottom line through this approach. 500 gold coins. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly, with an unwavering and decisive tone, leaving no room for the man to consider. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang casually mention 500 gold coins, the onlookers already understood that this girl in the white dress was indeed wealthy. "Miss, I brought this little brat from another place, and I've spent quite a bit of effort on the way. Shouldn't I get a little more?" However, it was as if Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't heard the man's words as she continued, 500 gold coins. However, her expression was even colder than before. The man's expression turned somewhat unsightly. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was not an ordinary person, he could only say, 500 gold coins it is. This woman is scheming. Listening to the man's words, a hint of a smile deepened in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. With a flick of her hand, a money pouch fell into the man's hand. 500 gold coins, you can leave now. The man caught the money pouch, nodded after checking the contents, and turned to leave. Once the man was gone, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell upon the woman at her feet. "Now, you can let go." Hearing this, the woman nervously released her hands and gratefully looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. "Benefactor, thank you for saving me." Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned cold. No need. With those words, Bailey Hongzhuang turned and walked forward, but the woman followed behind her. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped and turned indifferently. Why are you following me? Benefactor, you saved me, so I am yours. Whether as a maid or in any other role, I am willing to repay you, the woman earnestly spoke, her expression pure, as if Bailey Hongzhuang had saved her and she wanted to repay her with her life. However, others might fall for this, but Bailey Hongzhuang was not interested. No need. You should live your own life, Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly. The woman hesitated, her doe-like eyes filled with innocence. Her voice was sorrowful and weak. Benefactor, I have no family left. I only ask to follow you. Witnessing this scene, the onlookers couldn't help but feel moved. Indeed, everything went as they had expected. This woman was truly willing to offer herself. Though I saved you, I have no intention of having a powerless woman by my side, Bailey Hongzhuang replied with a clear and pleasant tone. Benefactor, I will make myself strong. I only ask that you don't abandon me, the woman deeply expressed, tears finally rolling down her cheeks, as if she had been abandoned by the most important person in her life. Master, I have a feeling that this woman is scheming, Xiao He said with a cold and cunning look as it observed the woman in the green dress on the ground. Although she had been acting well all along, it instinctively felt that this woman was scheming. Being followed by a sycophant, especially a woman, without any reason on the busy street was indeed suspicious. Listening to Xiao He, Bailey Hongzhuang became even more certain. Her thoughts were the same as Xiao He's, that there must be some scheme going on. Since that's the case, I'll grant this woman's wish. I want to see what she's up to, Bailey Hongzhuang said with deep and intelligent phoenix-like eyes. The woman's persistence was truly intriguing. Xiao He and Xiao Bai glanced at each other. They were also curious about what this woman intended to do. They had only arrived in Tianyan Kingdom today, so who would be targeting them? In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell upon the woman in the green dress. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, showing a hint of concern. Forget it, come with me to the inn for now. We'll find another place tomorrow. As Bailey Hongzhuang's words fell, a glimmer of excitement appeared in the woman's eyes. She nodded repeatedly and got up from the ground. Thank you, benefactor. Seeing the woman joyfully following behind Bailey Hongzhuang, the onlookers couldn't help but feel envious. If this woman were following them instead of Bailey Hongzhuang, how wonderful would that be? Woman in green skirt, green radish. When Di Baichen returned, he saw another person standing behind Bailey Hongzhuang, and a trace of doubt flickered in his deep and enchanting eyes. Hongzhuang, who is this? Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged helplessly. I found her by the roadside. She was whipped by a big man and begged me to save her. Now she insists on following me and refuses to leave. Upon hearing this, Di Baichen couldn't help but look at the woman in the green dress, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. When the woman in the green dress saw Di Baichen, a gleam of amazement appeared in her eyes. She couldn't believe that such a handsome man existed in the world. However, compared to the emotions stirring in the heart of the woman in the green dress, Di Baichen's gaze towards her was devoid of any sentiment. It was just a casual glance before he withdrew it. I plan to let her rest at the inn for the night and let her find her own way tomorrow. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her gaze to Di Baichen. What do you think? Di Baichen affectionately patted Bailey Hongzhuang's head and directly held her delicate, boneless hand. Do whatever you want. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, her red lips parting. It's getting late. Let's go back. We have to set off early tomorrow. Okay. Hand in hand, Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the inn, with the woman in the green dress following closely behind them, her gaze fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. Upon reaching the inn, they were informed that it was already fully occupied. Helplessly, Bailey Hongzhuang could only share a room with the woman in the green dress. "Kind benefactor, may I freshen up first?" After entering the room, the woman in the green dress cautiously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and tentatively asked. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the woman in the green dress. Her green dress had already been torn in several places, with faint traces of blood seeping through, indicating that the strong man hadn't shown any mercy. "What's your name?" Bailey Hongzhuang inquired. "I'm called Lu Luo." The woman in the green dress replied softly, her timid and fearful appearance resembling that of an innocent child. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I see. You can go freshen up." "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang took out a porcelain bottle from her bag and handed it to Lu Luo. "This is medicine for healing wounds. Apply it to your injuries, and they will heal faster." "Thank you, kind benefactor." Lu Luo looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gratefully, as if she had been running for a long time and had finally encountered a benefactor. Bailey Hongzhuang watched as Lu Luo went to freshen up in the other corner. She had already sensed that this woman was just an ordinary person without any yuan power within her. Why would such a person come to find her? Could she have misjudged the situation? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't understand for a moment. Although she had enemies, what could an ordinary woman without any strength do? Looking at Lu Luo's tattered clothes, Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment and then walked out of the inn. Since she had already saved her, Lu Luo couldn't continue wearing her previous clothes. Bailey Hongzhuang decided to buy her a new outfit. Arriving at a clothing store, Bailey Hongzhuang casually picked a green dress. Obviously, this color suited Lu Luo very well. However, while buying the dress, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was constantly thinking about why Lu Luo had appeared. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Since she didn't know what Lu Luo's intentions were, she could inquire about it from that strong man. Chishui City was not big, and there weren't many lively places. Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked out of the clothing store when she saw the sturdy man entering the Qinghong Tower with a smile on his face. "It seems that you are dishonest. The Fengyue place is undoubtedly the man's favorite destination." Bailey Hongzhuang followed closely behind him. Once the man entered the room with a courtesan in his arms, Bailey Hongzhuang also revealed her presence. The man was taken aback when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. "How did you end up here?" As expected, something was amiss. Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow and smiled lightly. "Why do you look so scared to see me?" The man hesitated for a moment and then tried to compose himself. "I am just surprised to see you here. Our transaction is already complete. What are you doing here? Who is Lu Luo? Be honest with me." Bailey Hongzhuang walked up to the man, looking down at him with a proud expression. "She's just a woman I bought, nothing more." "It seems you're not being honest." Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't surprised by the man's attitude. Some people wouldn't admit their mistakes until they faced dire consequences. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang grabbed the man's neck, lifting him up in front of the shocked gazes of the man and the woman. Though the man was sturdy, he was just an ordinary person, completely powerless in front of her. "I'll give you 3 seconds. Either speak the truth or die." Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was cold. She despised people who plotted against her secretly. No matter who they were, she wouldn't let them go. The man's face quickly turned red, and no matter how he struggled, it was in vain. He felt the air leaving him little by little. Looking into the indifferent eyes of the woman in front of him, he had no doubt that if he didn't tell the truth, she would really kill him. Thinking of this, the man couldn't help but feel terrified. He blurted out, "All right, I'll talk." Seeing the fear in the man's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang believed he wouldn't dare to lie. She released her grip on his neck. The man immediately fell to the ground, gasping for breath and greedily inhaled the air. He had almost died. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang again, fear appeared in the man's eyes. Speak. Just a simple word, but it shook the man's mind. He no longer dared to hide anything and quickly spilled all the information he knew. Lady, I've been framed. I didn't do anything. Today, someone found me and asked me to act in this play. I didn't know who Lu Luo really was. The man knelt in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, he only engaged in some petty illegal activities, but today someone came to him, promising a generous reward if he played this act. Greed took over, and he agreed without hesitation. Moreover, later on, the woman in white gave him 500 gold coins. It was like a godsend. That's why he came to the brothel in high spirits, but he didn't expect to be caught by this lady, almost losing his life. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have agreed in the first place. There really were no free lunches in this world. After hearing the man's story, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. It seemed her speculation was correct, this was all a well-orchestrated plan. However, Lu Luo's acting was indeed remarkable. If she didn't have her past life's experiences and was merely a 16-year-old girl, she probably would have been deceived. Suddenly, being hugged, Di Beichen was cultivating inside the room when suddenly he heard a knock on the door from outside. He knew that Hongzhuang had left earlier to help the girl in the green dress buy some clothes. The clothing store was close to the inn, so Hongzhuang went there by herself. However, he couldn't sense Hongzhuang's presence returning, so who could be knocking on the door now? Di Beichen slowly opened the door and saw the woman in the green dress standing before him. A look of surprise appeared on his handsome and clear face as he slightly furrowed his brows. What brings you here? After bathing and grooming, Lu Luo looked even more beautiful and charming. Her fair little face now had a hint of blush, and her eyes were as alluring as rippling autumn waters. Her delicate and weak appearance alone was enough to evoke a man's protective instincts. There were probably very few men who could resist such temptation. However, in the face of this irresistible allure that other men couldn't resist, Di Beichen remained indifferent, his words cold and devoid of any compassion. My benefactor went out to buy me some clothes, but I haven't seen her return yet. Lu Luo lowered her head, her gaze fixed on the floor, and her voice revealed a hint of fear and worry. Hearing this, Di Beichen's brows also furrowed slightly. It had indeed been quite some time since Hongzhuang left. I'll go out and find Hongzhuang. A worried expression filled Di Beichen's deep and captivating eyes. He couldn't help but think about Bailey Hongzhuang. It was taking her too long to come back after buying a simple dress. Could something have happened? Hearing his words, Lu Luo was taken aback. His reaction was completely different from what she had anticipated. I am alone in the room, and I'm afraid that the bad people will come back for me. Sir, can I stay by your side? As soon as my benefactor returns, I'll go back. As if summoning up great courage, Lu Luo finally spoke the words she wanted to say. Di Beichen's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Lu Luo, his expression dark and uncertain. Feeling Di Beichen's slightly gloomy gaze, Lu Luo stuttered, After a moment of contemplation, Di Beichen, though he had no fondness for this woman, nor any particular dislike, couldn't simply ignore her since she was saved by Hongzhuang. If that's the case, then stay in the room for now. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Lu Luo's heart delighted, and a glimmer of joy appeared in her eyes. She obediently sat down nearby. Di Beichen's gaze then turned to the window. Hongzhuang had been gone for quite a while, so what was she doing? However, the next moment, a smile appeared on Di Beichen's lips because he saw the familiar figure in white, graceful and ethereal, downstairs. Just as Di Beichen was about to open the door to welcome Bailey Hongzhuang, Lu Luo suddenly stood up, tore open her own clothes, and directly hugged Di Beichen. Sir, caught off guard by Lu Luo's embrace, Di Beichen also paused, his face darkening instantly. He pushed Lu Luo away forcefully. However, Lu Luo clung tightly to Di Beichen and wouldn't let go. A storm of suppressed emotions surged in his deep, dark eyes. Just as Di Beichen was about to forcefully push Lu Luo away, the door opened. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure appeared before Di Beichen. Di Beichen froze, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. His fists also involuntarily clenched. This was just despicable. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the room without visiting Lu Luo and arrived at Di Beichen's room. However, she didn't expect to see such a scene as soon as she opened the door. Would she believe this kind of trick? Tears welled up in Lu Luo's eyes. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, she hurriedly left Di Beichen and came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Benefactor, young master, Lu Luo didn't finish her sentence, tears had already started streaming down her cheeks, expressing her deep frustration. Di Beichen's eyes revealed a hint of nervousness and panic. He usually didn't care about anything except for Bailey Hongzhuang, especially when such a huge misunderstanding occurred. Almost immediately, Di Beichen realized that this was a setup, and he had been too lax in his vigilance. He had thought the girl was harmless and wouldn't cause any trouble. Now, it seemed he had underestimated the situation. Hongzhuang, this is a misunderstanding, Di Beichen quickly spoke up, his calm and indifferent face showing signs of tension. If Hongzhuang misunderstood him like this, then No, he couldn't let this happen. Bailey Hongzhuang was the most important person to him, and the thought of her ignoring him made his heart ache. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Lu Luo, and she had been worried it might be a massive conspiracy, that the other party wanted to use Lu Luo to set a trap for her. But it turned out to be something like this, such a low-level trick. Did they really think she would believe it? Tell me, what happened? Bailey Hongzhuang asked, looking at Lu Luo. Lu Luo slowly raised her head, her tearful eyes meeting Bailey Hongzhuang's. After seeing the benefactor going out and not coming back, I wanted to find him. But I didn't expect young master treated me like this. Di Beichen's face turned dark. Damn conspiracy. After hearing Lu Luo's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally looked at Di Beichen, only to see the nervousness and worry in his eyes, which softened her heart. Hongzhuang, what she said, Di Beichen didn't finish his sentence before Bailey Hongzhuang interrupted him. No need to say more. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's determined look, Di Beichen's heart sank. Could it be that Hongzhuang? But in the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang had already held Di Beichen's hand and coldly smiled at Lu Luo. Do you really think I would believe such a despicable trick? Di Beichen, who had been worrying, couldn't help but brighten up upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He was afraid that she would resent him after seeing this scene. He understood how much of an impact this situation could have on her, and he feared that any woman would find it hard to endure. But his wife believed in him so much. Lu Luo was stunned, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with tearful eyes. Her delicate and charming face was filled with nervousness and panic. Benefactor, what do you mean? I didn't, enough, stop with the pitiful act. I'm not buying it, Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. Such a demeanor might make men feel sympathetic, but it was annoying to her as a woman. Benefactor, you've misunderstood me, Lu Luo continued. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly smiled with a hint of allure, making her already stunning appearance even more tempting. Lu Luo, who do you think is better looking between you and me? Lu Luo was once again taken aback by Bailey Hongzhuang's question. What did she mean? Naturally, the benefactor is more beautiful, Lu Luo replied softly. A wider smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips as she nodded slightly, exactly. My man. In terms of appearance, temperament, and ability, you can't compare to me, so how could my man be interested in you? Her jet-black phoenix eyes carried a hint of sarcasm, not to mention that she had already learned the truth from the mouth of the sturdy man. Even if she hadn't known, she wouldn't have believed this kind of drama if she saw it. Di Beichen has always been good to her, and she is well aware of her importance in his heart. Just a mere green ivy, how could it make Di Beichen lose control? Moreover, what is Di Beichen's status? There are countless outstanding women surrounding him on a daily basis, but Di Beichen has never shown any interest. Though the green ivy has a certain charm, enough to evoke a man's protective instincts, she knows that Di Beichen is no ordinary man. Lu Luo trembled, facing Bailey Hongzhuang's piercing gaze. She felt a sense of guilt and felt as if Bailey Hongzhuang had seen through everything. This can't be possible. Any woman who sees such a scene would be heartbroken and would not even bother listening to Di Beichen's explanation before leaving. Why is Bailey Hongzhuang so different? Seeing such a stimulating scene, Bailey Hongzhuang could actually remain so composed, which defied all logic. However, in Di Beichen's mind, the 4 words by Li Hongzhuang said kept echoing, "My man." This is the first time Bailey Hongzhuang publicly referred to herself as his woman. Although she acknowledged being his wife, she had never addressed him as husband or introduced him to others in this way. And now, Bailey Hongzhuang says, "My man," so naturally. Thinking of this, Di Beichen's previously disturbed mood instantly improved. Lu Luo doesn't know either, but what Lu Luo said is true. Seeing Lu Luo still trying to deny it, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at her impatiently. "Go back and tell Han Shiling that this kind of trick won't work on me." She didn't know how many times she had experienced this kind of crude trick before. With just a glance, she could see the flaws in it. At most, Lu Luo's acting skills were a little better compared to others. Han Shiling's move was indeed interesting. If an ordinary woman saw this scene, she would probably be heartbroken and think she had misjudged Di Beichen, and she would never associate with him again. However, she is not the ordinary woman that Han Shiling thinks she is. If she didn't have a certain level of ability, how could she know and be with Di Beichen? Speaking of which, Han Shiling still doesn't understand Di Beichen well enough. At least, she doesn't understand Di Beichen's perspective. Hearing the name Han Shiling, Lu Luo's expression changed slightly, but her small face still had an innocent look, and she tearfully said, "Kind sir, how could you wrong me like this?" However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even spare a glance at Lu Luo and directly focused her gaze on Di Beichen. "Get lost." Just one sentence, filled with Di Beichen's anger. This shameless woman dared to try and ruin the feelings between him and Hongzhuang. It's simply unforgivable. Lu Luo trembled, feeling a wave of killing intent coming towards her, enveloping her completely. An inexplicable chill rose from her feet, rendering her unable to move. However, Di Beichen had long grown tired of Lu Luo's fake innocent act, his eyes filled with disgust, and he directly threw her out of the door. "If I don't believe you, who can I believe?" Bailey Hongzhuang watched Di Beichen deal with everything with a smile on her face, saying, "You really don't spare any affection for other women, except for me." "Other women are just pink-covered skeletons in my eyes," replied Di Beichen seriously. After so many years, he had only been moved by Bailey Hongzhuang. Apart from Bailey Hongzhuang, he had never been excited by any other woman. Perhaps it was destined from the beginning, as he was the first to discover her beauty and goodness. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly, and a brilliant smile flickered in her clear eyes. "Pink-covered skeletons. If other women heard you say that, they would be heartbroken." Di Beichen walked up to Bailey Hongzhuang and stopped, holding her 2 small hands in his. "I'm serious." Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. Initially, she was joking, but when she saw the sincere and serious look in Di Beichen's eyes, her playful attitude softened, and a touch of emotion appeared on her pretty face. In this world, there were so many unfaithful men, and it was always the women who ended up sad. However, facing Di Baichen, she had a kind faith in him that others couldn't understand. Di Baichen gazed into Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. "Hongzhuang, thank you for believing in me." At that moment, countless possibilities flashed through his mind, like the fear that Bailey Hongzhuang would leave him because of the misunderstanding. He feared that no matter how he had explained, she wouldn't believe him, and worried that she would have broken up with him. But in that situation, Bailey Hongzhuang proudly declared him as her man. This level of trust was enough to move Di Baichen. In this lifetime, he would not let Bailey Hongzhuang down. Bailey Hongzhuang wrapped her hands around Di Baichen's neck, gazing at his flawless face, causing ripples in her heart. She had seen the panic, nervousness, and even fear in his eyes just now. He had an extraordinary identity, yet such a small misunderstanding had made him feel scared. And she felt a bit distressed. His care for her was evident in everything he did. "If I don't believe you, who can I believe?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled charmingly. "I will always believe in you." With Di Baichen's identity, what kind of woman couldn't he find? If Di Baichen didn't truly care for her, why would he be so nervous? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Baichen's eyes slightly narrowed, and then he tightly embraced her. "With a wife like you, what more can a husband ask for?" As long as he had Bailey Hongzhuang's trust, he felt that everything was enough. Outside the door, Lu Luo stood in a daze. This scene happened too suddenly, and she still couldn't believe it was real. What went wrong? There were no flaws in her plan. Why did Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude turn out to be the opposite of what she expected? She couldn't figure out the reason, but the reality was right in front of her, forcing her to face it. She had failed like this, and she didn't know how to explain herself. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen didn't deal with her harshly, which was already good enough. However, if she survived, would those people think she had spilled the truth? Thinking of this, Lu Luo couldn't help but shudder. Even if she denied it, no one would believe her. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang did this intentionally? "If you don't leave me, I'll never leave you." In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen couldn't be bothered to deal with Lu Luo at all. After all, Lu Luo was just a powerless girl, and killing her would be too easy. Her existence posed no threat to them, so they didn't bother to take action. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to use this situation to tell Han Xiling that such crude methods were useless against her. "Baichen, Han Xiling's feelings for you must be deep if she came up with such a plan." Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and shook her head. She had thought that Han Xiling, with her intelligence, would not resort to such schemes. She believed that Han Xiling must have been anxious due to Di Baichen's attitude after he returned home. That's why she tried to separate them using any means necessary. Trying to deal with the situation with Di Baichen would undoubtedly be very difficult. So Han Xiling resorted to this method to distance herself from him, which seemed to be the best option under the circumstances. If she and Di Baichen didn't have enough trust between them, then Han Xiling might have succeeded in her plan. Di Baichen's deep and dark eyes revealed a hint of coldness and disgust as he spoke. "I never knew she was capable of such low tactics." Di Baichen never thought that this plan was Lu Luo's own idea. Someone must have asked her to do it. Besides Han Xiling, there was no one who wanted to destroy his relationship with Hongzhuang and also understood women's psychology so well. Perhaps Han Xiling knew that once he and Bailey Hongzhuang were together, the assassins wouldn't have a chance to act, so she devised this plan. As a man, he naturally didn't anticipate such schemes. It was only after experiencing what just happened that he truly understood how ruthless this method was. Now it was clear to him that he didn't know Han Xiling well enough. Han Xiling's actions had crossed his bottom line. Bailey Hongzhuang was the woman he loved the most, and Han Xiling was trying her best to bring harm to her. He couldn't tolerate it. The next time something like this happened, he wouldn't be so lenient. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged, many people will stop at nothing to get the person they love. She couldn't deny that she was disgusted with Han Xiling, but from Han Xiling's perspective, she could understand it to some extent. After all, Han Xiling had liked Di Beichen for so many years, and her sudden appearance probably ruined Han Xiling's plans. It was normal for her to want to get rid of her. However, understanding Han Xiling's actions didn't mean she would accept them. Since Han Xiling was trying every way to kill her, she wouldn't be polite when dealing with Han Xiling in the future. Wife, I didn't think it through before, but from now on, I won't let these tricks harm you again. Di Beichen gazed into Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes again, I don't want anyone else but you. A bright smile filled Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Di Beichen's words were like a pledge, clearly expressing his love for her. If you don't leave me, I'll never leave you. This was also Bailey Hongzhuang's vow. As long as their hearts were connected, nothing could separate them. As for Han Xiling's tricks, they would only bring Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang closer together. Flying Dragon Beast listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's heart was moved. His Hongzhuang was incomparable to anyone else. Di Beichen embraced Bailey Hongzhuang once again, feeling fortunate to have met her. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already left the inn early in the morning as they were about to set off for the bloodstained abyss. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged Bai Shi. With her increase in strength, Bai Shi, the white lion, had also grown larger. At this moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were carefree, sitting directly on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Now that they were going out to cultivate, no one knew them on the way there, so there was no need for them to be cautious. Finally, they could openly interact with people. Di Beichen quickly discussed the itinerary with the flying beast merchant. The blood-stained abyss was located at the border of Shuyuan Kingdom, which was quite far from Tianyan Kingdom. Even with a flying beast, it would take several days to reach their destination. Fortunately, there were flying beasts that could directly travel to Shuyuan Kingdom, saving them from the trouble of traveling. Wife, everything is settled, Di Beichen returned with a smile. We can set off shortly. Seeing Di Beichen return, Xiao Bai leaped and sat directly on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. It had a good impression of Di Beichen, and seeing how slender Bailey Hongzhuang was, carrying Bai Shi while also supporting Xiao He's weight seemed like too much of a burden. So, it decided to sit on Di Beichen's shoulder. On the one hand, it would reduce the burden on the master, and on the other hand, it would draw less attention. After all, having 3 demonic beasts by her side made Bailey Hongzhuang quite eye-catching. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She didn't know where the blood-stained abyss was located, but now that Di Beichen had arranged everything, she felt very happy. All right. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the flying beast not far away. It was a flying dragon beast, enormous in size, capable of carrying about 10 people. It is skilled in flight, with a moderate speed, but very stable. It was a popular choice for flying beasts. However, such flying beasts were only available in larger countries, and smaller countries usually had no access to them. This time, there are 5 other people besides us going to Shuyuan Kingdom. We'll be traveling together with them on the flying beast. Di Beichen frowned slightly. The flying dragon beast was enormous, capable of carrying 10 people at once, and this flight to Shuyuan Kingdom wasn't available every day. It meant Bailey Hongzhuang would have to travel with others. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile, no problem. She didn't mind this kind of arrangement at all. After all, they would be together only for the journey, and once they reached Shuyuan Kingdom, they would go their separate ways. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's lack of dissatisfaction, Di Beichen also relaxed. Hongzhuang had always been easygoing and didn't mind such things. At this moment, a group of 5 people approached the location of the flying beast. There were 3 men and 2 women, all in their 20s. Yen Lao-san, is the flying beast ready to go? The man in the lead seemed quite familiar with the owner of the flying beast, as he warmly greeted him as soon as they met. Upon seeing the man, Yen Lao-san smiled, "Young Master Yuan, you've arrived. Everything is prepared, just waiting for you all." Shuyuan Kingdom, Yuan Hongyang smiled and nodded, "We're all packed and ready to go. Master Yuan, this time there are 2 other guests heading to Shuyuan Kingdom, not just members of your Yuan family, Yen Lao-san laughed heartily. Yuan Hongyang and his group were from Shuyuan Kingdom, which was abundant in medicinal herbs but lacked food due to its perpetual snow cover. Yuan Hongyang frequently traveled to Tianyan Kingdom to do business, where he also had several industries. Over time, they became acquainted with Yen Lao-san, who often met Yuan Hongyang and his companions on this route. Hearing Yen Lao-san's words, Yuan Hongyang was somewhat surprised because very few people traveled from Tianyan Kingdom to Shuyuan Kingdom. When Yuan Hongyang's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his face brightened with amazement. Over the years, he had met many people through business, but he had never encountered such outstanding individuals before. Their appearance and demeanor were extraordinary. It was evident that they were not ordinary people. Yuan Hongyang's years of experience in business had honed his perception. "We can depart now." Since everyone had gathered, Yen Lao-san didn't waste any time and called for everyone to board the flying dragon beasts. "Wife, let's go," Di Beichen said slowly. Yuan Hongyang approached Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, wearing a warm smile on his face. "I am Yuan Hongyang. Since we are all headed to Shuyuan Kingdom, the journey on the flying beast will take more than 10 days. How about we get to know each other and make the trip a little less boring?" Yuan Hongyang's smile was genuine, and there was no trace of scheming in his clear eyes. He simply wanted to befriend Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't act pretentious and introduced themselves. "I am Di Beichen, and this is my wife, Bailey Hongzhuang. Mr. D and Miss Bailey, you two are truly a match made in heaven. Even though I've met many people, you are the first couple I've seen with such extraordinary talent and beauty," Yuan Hongyang praised. Both Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled, thinking that Yuan Hongyang seemed like a decent person. Before they could exchange more words, Yen Lao-san urged them to board the flying dragon beasts, and the 3 of them settled into their seats. The flying dragon beasts had 10 seats fixed onto their bodies to prevent cultivators from falling off during the flight. The beasts weren't as fast as some other flying demonic beasts, but their speed was still considerable. Only cultivators could ride flying beasts like these. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand the gusting winds. It required a certain level of cultivation, and many cultivators wouldn't dare to ride one until they reached a certain level of proficiency. Yuan Hongyang was even more impressed with Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, as they were both young and talented enough to ride a flying dragon beast. Especially Bailey Hongzhuang, who appeared to be around 16, yet she could already ride a flying beast, truly exceptional. Once everyone was securely seated, Yen Lao-san guided the flying dragon beast into the sky, and the city of Qi Shui gradually shrank in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Chapter 939. Di Beichen sat behind Bailey Hongzhuang and placed his hands on the armrests of the seat beside Bailey Hongzhuang. His handsome face was full of concern. "My dear wife, the wind will be very strong in the air if you ride on the wyvern. You can use your elemental energy to withstand the wind." Listening to Di Beichen's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I understand. In her previous life, she often rode on the flying beast, but in this life, it was her first time riding on it. With a thought, her elemental energy was attached to Bailey Hongzhuang's body to withstand the wind. Otherwise, if she was blown by the wind all the way, she would have many scars on her face by the time she got down. This was the reason why ordinary people and low-level cultivators could not ride on the flying beast. We have to stay on the wyvern for more than 10 days and there are no other activities. We can only bear with it. Di Beichen's handsome eyes were full of concern. He was often on the move and was already used to this situation. However, it was the first time that Hong Zhuang was so tired and he was worried that Hong Zhuang would not be used to it. He remembered that when he first rode on the flying beast, he was also not used to it. Moreover, Hong Zhuang had just rushed from the Qin dynasty to the Tianyan kingdom. She had only rested for a short day before embarking on the journey again. He could not help but worry. Noticing Di Beichen's worried expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a beautiful smile. "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine." Although it was her first time riding on a flying beast, she still had the experience of her previous life. Moreover, she was not a pampered person in this life. She could quickly get used to this kind of thing. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to withstand the wind well, Di Beichen was also relieved. His wife could really cope with anything. After Yuan Hongyang saw that Di Beichen was so concerned about Bailey Hongzhuang, a smile appeared in his eyes. Looks like young Master Di and Miss Bailey are newlyweds. This relationship is really enviable. Hearing this, Di Beichen smiled faintly, agreeing with Yuan Hongyang's words. "Why are you going to the snow country? Could it be the blood-ground abyss?" Yuan Hongyang curiously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Over the past few years, the only people who came to the Tianyan kingdom from the snow origin country were their Yuan clan's people. It was rare to see other people going to the snow origin country. Every time he saw other people heading to the snow origin country, he would be very enthusiastic. After all, he liked to make friends. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were so young, and their strength was quite good. The blood-ground abyss was the most famous place in the snow origin kingdom, and many cultivators would go there out of admiration. Although there were very few people who could obtain the inheritance in the blood-ground abyss, the blood-ground abyss was still extremely lively. Seeing that Yuan Hongyang directly mentioned the blood-ground abyss, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not avoid it and directly nodded, "That's right, our destination is the blood-ground abyss." A hint of surprise appeared in Yuan Hongyang's eyes. Although he already had a guess in his heart, he still could not help but admire them when he heard their affirmative answers. The blood-ground abyss is very dangerous. There are many heinous cultivators who kill without batting an eyelid. If you are not careful, you may not be able to walk out again. Looking at your temperaments, you should be of high status. Isn't it too dangerous for only the two of you to go to the blood-ground abyss? Chapter 940. Even if they were protected by their clans, they could still die in a place like the blood-ground abyss that was filled with blood. However, only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were going there alone, so it was too dangerous. Di Beichen looked at Yuan Hongyang. He knew that the man did not have any intention to pry into their backgrounds and was just purely concerned. "We're just going there to take a look. Just be careful," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. Yuan Hongyang nodded. "That's true. It's good to take advantage of this time to take a look, but you must be careful. Most of the people in the blood-ground abyss are vicious and evil, so you can't trust people easily. Once you're deceived, the consequences will be terrifying. Especially young girls, most of them can't stand such a bloody scene." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. "Young Master Yuan has been to the blood-ground abyss?" Yuan Hongyang thought for a moment, then nodded. "That's right. My home is in Snow Country, which is not far from the Bloodground Abyss. I naturally wanted to take a look when I was young. Oh. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. How did you feel after going to the Bloodground Abyss, young Master Yuan? Yuan Hongyang waved his hand helplessly. I'm not afraid of being laughed at by you, but I left before I could stay for 3 days. I really couldn't get used to that kind of scene. Di Beichen curled his lips. Yuan Hongyang was honest. He had seen many young people in the Bloodground Abyss who left after mustering their courage. Fortunately, the vicious and evil people were not interested in some young masters at all. Otherwise, young cultivators were likely to die in there. Back then, when he entered the Bloodground Abyss with his master, he also felt uncomfortable and resisted the disgust in his heart to not vomit. However, under his master's guidance, he managed to endure it. As the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, if he could not even endure such an experience, how could he be qualified to take over Tiangang's sect in the future? If one wanted to become a powerhouse, one's mentality was undoubtedly very important. Only after witnessing such slaughter and blood could one clearly understand how cruel the world was. The stronger one was, the more one could feel the cruelty of this world. Only when their strength reached a certain level could they live the life they wanted. He didn't know if Hongzhuang could break through the barrier in her heart, but he believed that if Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to go back to the Lan family to understand everything, then seeing more things would make her more determined. It wouldn't be bad for the future. We also heard that the Bloodground Abyss is extremely extraordinary, so we wanted to see it for ourselves. Yuan Hongyang chuckled. It was indeed beneficial to gain some experience, but I later felt that my talent in cultivation was not enough, so I began to do business for my family. Young Master Yuan, are you from an aristocratic family? Di Beichen asked. Yuan Hongyang nodded, I'm from the Yuan clan of the Snow Origin Country. When we reach the Snow Origin Country, if the two of you are free, you can come to my house. My family has always been hospitable. It's a great blessing to be able to make 2 more friends. Yuan Hongyang knew that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were not ordinary people. It would be good to know them and form a good relationship. Chapter 941. The other cultivators from the Yuan family were not too surprised when they heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were planning to head to the Snow Country. Over the years, they had been doing business outside, so many cultivators would ask them about the Bloodground Abyss when they found out that they were from the Snow Country. Although the Bloodground Abyss had gathered many evil people, even more people wanted to know the inheritance of the Bloodground Abyss. Even though very few people could obtain the inheritance, many young people still wanted to experience it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were very young, so they must be very interested in the Bloodground Abyss. However, after they personally witnessed the cruelty of the Bloodground Abyss, their initial interest would disappear. This was because it was not an interesting place at all, it was a place full of evil. Miss Bailey, although the Bloodground Abyss has a mysterious inheritance, very few people can obtain it. Apart from a young man who obtained it a few years ago, no one else has obtained it. On the contrary, due to the uniqueness of the Bloodground Abyss, many evil people gather there. This is because the Bloodground Abyss is famous for being a no-man's land, so no force can continue to pursue them there. It is because of this that many evil people gather there because they have nowhere to go. You and young Master D are so young, and you don't have any powerhouses by your side. Once you go there, it'll be very dangerous, Yuan Liqing could not help but say. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen seemed to be very good people. As long as they cultivated well, they would definitely achieve something in the future. If they entered the Bloodground Abyss just like that, it would be terrible if they could not come out. Bailey Hongzhuang lived in the Snow Country. Although she had not personally been to the Bloodground Abyss, she knew very well how terrifying it was. It would be a pity if Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen died there. Bailey Hongzhuang was very touched when she sensed Yuan Liqing's concern. They were just strangers who met by chance. The fact that Yuan Liqing and Yuan Hongyang could persuade him like this showed that they were kind-hearted people. Thank you for your advice, Miss Yuan. Since Beichen and I have already set off for Snow Origin Country, it would be a pity if we didn't go and take a look. Don't worry, we'll be extra careful. If there's any problem, we'll leave immediately. After all, we are also people who cherish our lives. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Seeing how serious Bailey Hongzhuang was, Yuan Liqing nodded. You're right. You have to be careful. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would occasionally cultivate or chat with the cultivators of the Yuan family. They had learned a lot about the Snow Origin Kingdom from the Yuan family's cultivators. A place that was covered in snow all year round also had scenery that no other place could have. As Bailey Hongzhuang listened to the narration of the people of the Yuan family, she also looked forward to the Snow Origin Kingdom. While riding on the flying beast, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. Back then, when she was riding on the flying beast, using her Yuan power to withstand the fierce wind was a simple matter. However, her current cultivation was not just a little bit different from back then. Therefore, after about a day, her Yuan power was exhausted. Chapter 942. Because of this, Bailey Hongzhuang grasped the time she had to cultivate on the flying beast. She had learned about the terror of the bloody ground abyss from Yuan Hongyang and the others. With her current cultivation, it would undoubtedly be risky for her to go there. Therefore, it would be good for her to take advantage of this opportunity to increase her strength. When Yuan Hongyang and the others saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were so focused on their cultivation, they understood that both of them prioritized their cultivation. Therefore, they did not disturb Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen much. In their opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were very impressive for being able to reach such a cultivation at such a young age. They must have been extremely hard-working in their cultivation. Time gradually passed, and finally, the snow country appeared in everyone's line of sight. We're almost at the snow country. Yan Laosan's voice was filled with excitement. The journey had been too long. Even though he often rode on the wyvern between the two countries, he still could not take it. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard Yan Laosan's words, she stopped cultivating and looked ahead. Everything in sight was white. A huge country was shrouded in ice and snow. It was truly a country of ice and snow. Every building was covered in ice and snow. It was as if it was a world in a video. However, a strong cold surrounded Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. As cultivators, their ability to resist the cold was undoubtedly much stronger than ordinary people, but this kind of bone-chilling cold was also somewhat unbearable for Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen was also helpless. He knew that the snow country was covered in ice and snow all year round. However, it was not winter in the Sky Yen Kingdom. Therefore, the clothing stores did not sell winter clothes. Yuan Hongyang and the others had already taken out their winter clothes and put them on. When they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not have any winter clothes, Yuan Hongyang immediately took out his own winter clothes and another one from Yuan Liqing. Only then did he look at Di Beichen. Master Di, the snow country has always been cold. This is your first time in the snow country, so I'm afraid you don't know about this. Put on these two pieces of clothing for the time being. Yuan Hongyang handed the clothes in his hand to Di Beichen, his eyes showing a bit of concern. Di Beichen looked at the clothes, and a touch of gratitude appeared in his eyes. Thank you, young Master Yuan. After taking the clothes, Di Beichen quickly put them on Bailey Hongzhuang. He was fine with it, but he couldn't let Hongzhuang catch a cold. Feeling the clothes on her body, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled at Di Beichen. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Yuan Hongyang and said with a smile, "Brother Yuan, thank you." Yuan Hongyang waved his hand. "It's just a coat to keep out the cold." "No need to thank me. We often travel between the Snow Country and the Sky Yen Kingdom. Therefore, we prepared a lot of clothes for both sides." Yuan Liqing said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. To be able to meet this group of good people from the Yuan family was something to be happy about. In the evening, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others successfully arrived at the border city of the Snow Country, the Yuan Wu City. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked down from the wyvern, she felt that she had been sitting for more than 10 days. Her entire body was stiff. After moving around, she felt refreshed. Chapter 943. Big Brother Yuan, thank you for your kindness. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, however, this is too troublesome. Di Beichen and I will stroll around the origin martial city and stay in an inn. Although Yuan Hongyang and the others were very hospitable, the two of them were still outsiders. It would be too troublesome for them to directly disturb the Yuan family. Moreover, they would not stay in the origin martial city for long. It would not be long before they left. Hearing this, Yuan Hongyang understood Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's thoughts and did not insist. He smiled and said, "Then we will bid farewell here. I hope that we will meet again in the future." Di Beichen nodded, "If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely invite young Master Yuan for a drink. It's a promise, haha. It's a promise." Yuan Hongyang and the other four left. They had brought back a lot of supplies from the Sky Swallow Kingdom. The Snow Origin Kingdom was cold all year round and it was difficult for food to grow. Therefore, most of them went out to do business to satisfy their family's needs. After Yuan Hongyang and the others left, Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's little hand. His handsome face was slightly apologetic. "My wife, the Snow Origin Kingdom has always been cold. How about we go buy some clothes to keep out the cold?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and held Di Beichen's hand tightly. She smiled and said, "All right, the Snow Origin Kingdom is so cold. I don't think we can buy such cold clothes near the Sky Swallow Kingdom." In the past, even the winters in the Foam Bow Kingdom were not as cold as the Snow Origin Kingdom. The citizens of this kingdom were almost always in winter. Di Beichen understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was comforting him. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tighter. "Let's quickly enter the city." Origin Martial City. As soon as they entered the city, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that this city was different from the Foam Bow Kingdom. The wide road was enough for 8 carriages to drive side by side. The entire city was clean and sparkling. There were almost no people setting up stalls on both sides of the street. Everything was sold in shops. Thinking about it, the Snow Origin country was truly too cold, and most of the commoners were ordinary people. If they were to set up a stall outside, the cold air would be unbearable. However, it was precisely because there were no stalls by the side of the streets that the entire city appeared even larger. At a glance, the food in the shop was emitting a bit of steam, which greatly increased one's appetite. Di Beichen noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and a smile appeared in his eyes. He rarely saw such a cute side of Bailey Hongzhuang. Normally, Hongzhuang had always been strong and confident, but now that she was with him, she showed the expression that a woman of her age should have. "We've been eating dry rations on the wyvern for so many days. It's been a long time since we've had warm food and wine. Let's go change our clothes before we go eat. What do you think?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and her smile became even brighter. Okay. Now that she and Di Beichen had come to a place where no one knew them, she felt very happy. If one day, she and Di Beichen could live a leisurely life like this, it would be great. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen bought a few sets of cotton-padded clothes. After changing into a set of cotton-padded clothes, they looked more compatible with the Snow Origin Kingdom. Chapter 944. In the restaurant. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen ordered a table full of food and wine. They had not eaten hot food for a while, so the two of them were really hungry. Xiao He and Xiao Bai kept rubbing their hands together. They could not wait any longer. When the food and wine were served, Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly reached out and started eating. "Oh my God, I've only been eating dry food for the past few days. My mouth is almost tasteless." Xiao He's eyes were sparkling. She looked like she had been starving for many days. Once she saw food, her eyes lit up and she could not wait to stuff all the food into her stomach. Xiao Bai directly chewed on the pork trotters. As she chewed, she said, "Delicious." Bai Shi was also eating at the side. Compared to Xiao He and Xiao Bai, he was undoubtedly more refined. Looking at the three beasts eating heartily, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. "Wife, it must have been very troublesome when you brought the three of them out to eat in the past, right?" Di Beichen joked with a smile. Xiao He and Xiao Bai, whom no one had seen before, just had to be two such gluttons. Bailey Hongzhuang probably had a lot of trouble feeding these two fellows. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. "I always order a lot of food and bring it back. Xiao He and Xiao Bai are unhappy when they don't have anything to eat." Di Beichen's gaze landed on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Based on how much these two gluttons loved to eat, Hongzhuang was probably having a hard time. Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not feel embarrassed at all when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Xiao He even raised her head and puffed out her chest. Eating is the most important thing in life. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up her chopsticks and knocked on Xiao He's head. "Just eat your food." Xiao He puffed up her cheeks in dissatisfaction. However, after looking at the table full of food, she forgot about it and began to gorge herself again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were also eating. However, the way they ate was extremely elegant. Many people in the restaurant looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Many people in Yuanwu City were very familiar with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were clearly not from Yuanwu City. However, they were not surprised. This was because many people from other places would often come to Yuanwu City. This was because the Bloody Ground Abyss was not very far from Yuanwu City. Many cultivators who came to the Bloody Ground Abyss would temporarily rest in Yuanwu City. Because of this, even though Yuanwu City was a border city of Snow Origin country, it was very prosperous. In Yuanwu City, everyone had seen almost all kinds of people. Therefore, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He, they were not surprised. However, when they saw Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi, their gazes could not help but linger a little longer. They had seen many cultivators with contracted beasts in Yuanwu City. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had 3 contracted beasts. It was undoubtedly very strange. Moreover, these 3 beasts did not seem to have any fighting strength. However, they gave people a feeling that they were very intelligent. Contracted beasts were something that only a small number of cultivators could possess. Therefore, no matter where they were, they would attract attention. "Hey, do you know what kind of contracted beast that is? Why have I never seen one like that before?" Chapter 945. No matter what kind of contract beast it is, the two of them should only have 2 contract beasts. Why do they have 3 contract beasts? Everyone was puzzled. Could it be that there was one contract beast that had not been contracted yet? If there was no contract, why was that contract beast so obedient? As everyone knew, other than contract beasts, ordinary beasts would attack humans when they saw them. How could they eat so obediently at the side? This was really too strange. Many people's gazes vaguely fell on the three beasts. They were really curious about the reason behind this. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also felt the gazes of the crowd, but the two of them had long been accustomed to the various gazes of others over the years. Now, these gazes no longer had any effect on them. As long as the other party did not come to find trouble, no matter how the other party looked at them, they would not have any thoughts. Bailey Hongzhuang also knew that it was indeed strange for three contract beasts to eat together here. However, she believed that the people of Yuanwu City must have seen many people from the bloody ground abyss. Although such a thing was strange, it was not too surprising. "Wife, do you want to rest in Yuanwu City for a few days?" Di Beichen asked. Ever since they left the Qing dynasty, they had been hurrying on their journey. Especially after staying on the Wyvern for so long, Hongzhuang must be very tired. Once they entered the bloody ground abyss, they would need to be very cautious. Only now could they relax a little in Yuanwu City. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. She also understood why Di Beichen would say such words at this time. Indeed, in such a place full of danger, the slightest carelessness could cause them to lose their lives. The two of them should go in their best condition. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, "Why don't we stay in Yuanwu City for 2 more days? After 2 days, we will go to the bloody ground abyss. How about it?" Di Beichen smiled dotingly, "I will listen to my wife." Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened a little. Although it was very tiring to be on the Wyvern for the past few days, she felt very fulfilled and satisfied at the thought of Di Beichen accompanying her. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were eating happily, a group of people came down from the 2nd floor. Lu Xuerong's gaze landed on the 3 furry demon beasts on Bailey Hongzhuang's table. She didn't expect that there would be such cute contracted beasts. Just looking at the 3 little fellows eating happily, Lu Xuerong felt envious. Powerful contracted beasts were hard to come by, so she didn't expect much. She only wanted to contract a cute demonic beast so that she could have a companion. However, she hadn't been able to find a suitable demonic beast. She didn't expect that there would be 3 of them here. "Big brother Xie, that demonic beast is so cute."